So I'm getting started with the tunnel book for the Summer Fairy House. And as I was thinking about how I wanted to go about it, I was measuring the house and thinking about different possibilities. And I realized that a 6 by 6 format would fit inside of the house. And I knew that when I had been working with the paper in the Fairy Rhymes collection, this is the Prima Fairy Rhymes collection, that several of the pages had fairies on them. For instance, you can see down here, this one has a little fairy on it. And so my idea was that if I kept the format 6 by 6, I could do some fussy cutting and use pages that had a fairy with them as the main base pages for the tunnel. So I looked through this Fairy Rhymes book, and I also had Nature Garden, another Prima collection, and then I brought out Botanical as well because I thought maybe some of that might go along with it. So there were, in the Fairy Rhymes collection, there were 4 pieces that had fairies on them. And I thought, maybe I need 5, so I found in the Nature Garden collection this other fairy. And then I know that in the tunnel book I want things to go tunnel back so you can see everything well, and so I started playing with the arrangement of these pages just to see what could go first, what would need to be changed a little bit, and what I'm thinking at this point, this girl and this girl, the full page could be used for them, and they could be at the front too, and just fussy cut around them and add some elements. And then as we move back in space, this one, I would not want her to line directly up with this one behind, so I want her to move in a little bit. There's kind of a wood pattern here on the bottom of this page, so another sheet in the collection has more wood, so I can use that to augment that frame and bring her in more to the center there and up. And then this fairy, if I bring her in, I think what I'll do is take another sheet of this same paper and just turn it a little. If I cut her out, put her in the middle here, and then fix the frame and bring her in. So that'll be so she'll be more like that. And then finally this last little fairy, somehow she'll be in the middle. There's another piece from that collection that could be used. So that's what I'm thinking to get started, and we'll see what happens next. So I finished all my initial fussy cutting, and now I'm ready to put the layers together and experiment with them and see if it's going to come together like I have envisioned. Before I do that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how I do the fussy cutting on these small images. Let me just take this one. And so what I do is I leave it on the paper, and I do use my craft knife for all of this. I haven't used any scissors. And I start with the little things from the inside, and I just gradually work my way out. But this is all attached still to the main page, and only when I'm finished with all of this little stuff do I finally disconnect it from this page. That way I have very little breakage. And I did take a marker and go around the edges because I don't want to have any white showing. So let's experiment with the layers. And what I'm going to use to do that is I've got some pieces of plastic and hopefully this won't be too glary in the camera. And then I've also got some repositionable adhesive to attach my layers to the plastic, and then I also have some spacers that I've made from three pieces of chipboard in case I want to layer them so I can actually see what the tunnel might look like. So I'm just going to put some repositionable adhesive on each one of these and quickly stick them down to a piece of plastic. Put each one aside here. Doesn't take much, and this will come off of the plastic, so you can reuse the plastic. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put plastic on each individual layer. The images are a little bit fragile, so let me start with just those first two. And originally I thought I would have this girl, this fairy, be in front, but because this one is so close to this border, I think it's going to go in front. So I'll layer these two, and then what to do with the next one. So I'm going to, this one I think will be next. Get a piece of plastic to put her on. Probably about in there. And put that down. Okay, that may work. And then I have this fairy. Let's put her on a piece of plastic. She'll probably go, I'm thinking about right there. So something like, now we're up to something about like this. I can see one concern I have at this point is that the one I just added seems a little larger in scale than this one in the front, so I may cut this one in the front out and swap their places. And then finally I have this last fairy, and I'll tilt this so that the glare doesn't come on, but I think that'll work. But let me try swapping out those two fairies and I'll be back. So I fussy cut out the first little fairy that had been attached to the border, and I swapped her with the pink fairy here on the left, and I put them onto the plastics and added the spacers in between, and I am happier with that arrangement. And so now, and I think everybody is about where I wanted. I might move this fairy in just a little bit so there's not so much of a space in the middle. But by and large, I think this will work. So now it's up trying to build up the layers individually, adding something for the fairies to stand on, possibly some background. I don't want it to get too busy, but you know, as I was fussy cutting things out, I thought about, well, I have this die that does some grass that maybe I could use, or here's a tree that could fit in there. So I'm just going to experiment, cut out some things, and then come back and we can look at some of the different layers as I test those things out. So I'm back to show you the progress that I'm making on the tunnel book, and I have 4 of the 5 sections put together. all I've done is made a little sandwich for each of the section, and it is the fussy cut images that I made, plus a chipboard frame, plus on the back there's just a piece of white cardstock just to finish it off a little bit. And so here's the first frame, and I didn't add anything or do anything special to it. On this second frame, I had the fairy cut out individually, and the problem with this fairy was that she didn't have any feet because of the way the image was placed on the paper. So if you look closely, you can see the break there, but I just took a little scrap piece of paper and drew some feet so she'd be able to stand. And then when I connected this fairy to the background here, I made sure to overlap it on this edge a little bit to give it some stability. On this third frame, I'm experimenting with possibly adding some grass from that die I showed you at the beginning. I think this is going to work out, but I'm not quite sure. Right now I have it kind of behind, and I will put the white paper, and so it'll be the fussy cut image, then the chipboard, then this grass, and then the white cardstock is the plan. So here is the backing for that. You can see how that will be on the back if I decide to go with that. And then this is the fourth frame, and here I took an image, a die. This is the full die cut, and I trimmed it back a little just so I could have a smaller tree. I wanted to have a little height here. And when I did that, I also just kind of stuck one of the little leaves I cut off and brought it over to this edge to help stabilize that image there. So now I'm ready to do the fifth panel, the last panel before the background, and I thought I'd show you how I go about doing that. And this is the same process that I followed for all the panels. So I just get all the previous panels stacked up here, and then get them all even, and then think about where this next fairy should go. Now I know that I want to have her over on the right, and she needs to be close enough to the edge so that these little hair tendrils can attach to the side border. So it's more about up and down vertical placement rather than horizontal placement, because I have those limiting factors. So once I figure out about where she's going to go, and I think that looks about right, maybe down just a smidge. And I'm working on the frame paper that I'm going to use as that background. So once I get that placed there, I'll just carefully remove all of these layers. And then with a pencil, I just come in here and draw where I want that the ground cover to go. And I think I want this one to kind of come up here to the right, left some. I can always cut this back down. I've been using a 1/2 inch border on all my frames here, so I'll just use my straight edge when I do that. So I'll come and I'll attach this to the chipboard and cut the chipboard and all 3 layers at the same I'm sorry, I cut the chipboard and this pattern paper at the same time, and then I put the white paper underneath. So that's what I will do next. So I've cut this section out using my craft knife, and I'll just remove that. And I just have a piece of paper that I'm auditioning for the background back there right now. And this little fairy is going to go about right there so that her hair can attach over there and her feet attach down there. So let's see what this is going to look like. And I think I'll put some of my spacers here and see if we can get a real look at what it will look like when it becomes the tunnel. So I'll just put those chipboard spaces there and add the next layer. And a couple more spacers. Just keep building up here. I really do think it's going to need that grass. Let's just stick that in there behind there and see what we think. Yeah, I think that helps with the darkness of this tree here. Probably come down a little bit. A couple more spacers. Next level. That's 2 spacers. So these are, so when this goes together, there'll be like an accordion binding on the 2 sides that we'll see next, and that's what I'm just trying to get an idea of kind of the depth that will be there once that kind of binding is in place. Let me see if I can hold this up. So I think that's going to work. I might add some more decorative elements up here at the top. I'm not sure. I don't want to get too busy. So I think I'll start putting my layers together, inking edges so I don't see white edges, and kind of getting the frames finalized. And then we'll be back to put the binding on and put it together.